Bella stood silently beside Ethan, her hands trembling as she gripped the cake knife. Soft music floated through the hall, chandeliers glittered overhead, and laughter echoed from every corner of the room. The groom's side was packed with family and friends, all smiles and joy. But on the opposite side, the rows reserved for Bella's family sat completely empty. Not a single familiar face, not a single explanation. The emptiness cut through her like a blade. She forced a smile, trying to hide the storm raging inside her chest. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, yet that vacant space turned her joy into something hollow and fragile. As everyone's eyes were on her, Bella subtly lowered her gaze and slipped a hand under the tablecloth, unlocking her phone. The screen lit up and her breath caught in her throat. 42 missed calls from her mother. Her pulse quickened. Below the missed calls, a single message glared back at her. "We need to talk now." Her body went rigid, her heart pounding so hard she thought the entire room could hear it. She lifted her head, scanning the hall in confusion, desperately seeking some kind of answer. Why weren't they here? Why had they disappeared on the most important day of her life? The crowd erupted into cheers as Ethan's family clapped and shouted in celebration. Bella's fingers tightened around the phone, her nails digging into her skin. In that moment, surrounded by noise and light, she felt utterly alone, like she was sinking into a dark, endless pit. Those empty chairs on her side of the aisle weren't just a missing presence. They were an unspoken accusation, a silent and cruel reminder that something was terribly, terribly wrong. The image of those empty chairs on her wedding day stayed etched in Bella's mind like a scar. To truly understand why their absence hurt so much, we need to return to her childhood, the place where the first wounds were formed. Bella grew up in a quiet, picturesque town in Vermont. Her father, Gregory, was the local high school principal, well known for being strict yet fair with his students. But ironically, the fairness he upheld at school seemed to disappear the moment he stepped through his own front door. Her mother, Lillian, was gentle and soft-spoken, always striving to keep the family's peace. Yet her heart seemed to hold a special, tender place for Camille, Bella's younger sister by 4 years. Camille was like a radiant light in the household, with sparkling green eyes and a natural charm that seemed to captivate everyone around her. From an early age, Camille displayed extraordinary artistic talent, particularly in ballet and painting. It was as if all she had to do was exist, and the world would adore her. Bella, on the other hand, couldn't have been more different. She was serious, introverted, and deeply passionate about science. While Camille could effortlessly draw attention with her grace and charisma, Bella found comfort in books, numbers, and carefully conducted experiments. The contrast between them was most visible at the dinner table. Camille only needed to share a funny story from her dance class, and immediately, Gregory and Lillian would lean forward, laughing, asking questions, showering her with praise. But when Bella tried to talk about her perfect test scores or the science project she had spent weeks preparing, the room would fall uncomfortably silent. A forced smile here, a distracted nod there, and then, without fail, the conversation shifted back to Camille. One evening, Camille came home clutching a gold medal from a local dance competition. The very next day, Lillian framed it and hung it in the most prominent spot by the front door, where every guest would see it. Bella stood quietly in the background, her own certificate for an academic scholarship crumpled in her hand. She didn't say a word. Instead, she tucked it away in her desk drawer, a place where no one would ever notice. Through countless moments like these, Bella slowly came to understand a painful truth. Love in her family was never equally shared, and no matter how hard she tried, she would always be standing outside the warm glow that surrounded Camille. The favoritism only grew more obvious as Bella got older. But she still clung to the hope that if she worked hard enough, her parents would finally notice her. She poured herself into her studies, especially science. Every perfect experiment, every successful result felt like another brick in the bridge she was building toward their approval, especially her father's. When Bella turned 17, she entered the state science fair with a project on medical nanotechnology. She had spent months preparing it, obsessing over every detail, determined to prove herself not just to the judges, but to her family. This was her chance to show them that she was worthy of their pride. As the award ceremony approached, Bella's excitement grew. She carefully chose a modest but elegant dress, imagining herself walking across the stage while Gregory and Lillian cheered for her from the front row. They had promised to be there, and Bella believed them with all her heart. But when the day finally came, reality shattered her expectations. Her name was called, and the hall erupted into applause, but the front row seats were painfully empty. Bella's stomach twisted, her breath catching as she scanned the crowd again and again. There was no sign of her parents. She forced a smile as she stepped onto the stage, clutching the trophy in trembling hands. To the audience, it looked like a moment of triumph. To Bella, it felt hollow and lonely, the cheers echoing around her like a cruel joke. That evening, Bella learned the truth. Gregory and Lillian hadn't simply forgotten. They had chosen to attend Camille's ballet recital instead, a performance they claimed was too important to miss. Alone in her dark bedroom, Bella sat with the trophy glittering on her desk. She imagined her parents in the audience at Camille's recital, their faces glowing with pride, their applause thunderous and warm. She had never been on the receiving end of that kind of love. In that moment, something inside Bella broke. It wasn't anger or jealousy, it was a cold, aching clarity. She finally understood that no matter how hard she tried, she would never have the same place in their hearts as Camille did. That night, Bella made a silent promise to herself. She would stop hoping. She would stop waiting for love and validation that would never come. From now on, she would guard her own heart, and she would rely only on herself. After deciding to close her heart to her family, Bella knew she couldn't stay trapped in the same small Vermont town forever. She needed a fresh start, a place where she could build her life without constantly being compared to Camille. As soon as she graduated high school, Bella packed her bags and moved to Boston to study biomedical engineering. The bustling city felt like another world compared to the quiet streets she'd grown up on. To Bella, it was both thrilling and terrifying, a chance to reinvent herself, but also a reminder of how alone she truly was. In those first weeks, everything felt overwhelming. The crowded streets, the massive lecture halls, the blur of unfamiliar faces rushing past her. While other students formed friend groups and found their place on campus, Bella buried herself in her studies. Books and lab work became her safe haven, a way to avoid the painful reminder that she didn't belong. She took on multiple part-time jobs to cover her expenses, extra lab shifts, late-night cafe work, her days blurring into a cycle of study, work, and sleep. Occasionally, she forced herself to attend a campus party, but she always ended up standing quietly in the corner, clutching a drink and wishing she were back in the lab. Despite the loneliness, Bella excelled academically. Her dedication and skill impressed her professors, and by the time she graduated, her reputation as a brilliant, meticulous student opened doors to incredible opportunities. When Meditech Solutions, a prestigious medical technology company, offered her a position, Bella felt a surge of pride. She had done this entirely on her own. No family connections, no Camille casting a shadow over her achievements. Yet, as Bella stood outside the sleek glass building on her first day, holding her brand new ID badge, a hollow ache stirred inside her chest. She had reached the milestone she'd dreamed of for years, but it didn't fill the void she carried within. Her past was still there, whispering in the back of her mind, telling her she didn't truly belong anywhere. What Bella didn't know was that soon, two people would enter her life, people who would change her world in ways she never imagined. The days at Meditech Solutions passed in a steady, predictable rhythm. Bella excelled at her work, always precise, always on time. Yet beneath the surface, her life felt empty. She had no one to share her successes or her struggles with, no one to truly see her. That began to change one quiet afternoon when she was assigned to a new project partner, Lauren Kim. Lauren was the same age as Bella, but she radiated warmth and energy. While Bella tended to keep to herself, Lauren was open and friendly, able to strike up a conversation with anyone. From the very start, Lauren noticed Bella's guarded nature, the way she kept a polite distance, speaking only when necessary. Instead of pushing, Lauren was patient. She invited Bella to lunch, asked her gentle questions, and created space for Bella to speak on her own terms. Slowly, Bella began to let her guard down. For the first time since moving to Boston, she felt like she'd found a true friend, someone who genuinely cared. Not long after, Bella attended a medical technology conference with her company. It was there she met Ethan Carter, a specialist in biomedical engineering. Ethan was unlike anyone Bella had ever encountered. He had a kind smile, a calm voice, and an attentive gaze that made people feel heard. When they spoke, Ethan didn't just discuss technical topics. He listened, truly listened, in a way that disarmed Bella completely. What started as a simple conversation turned into a connection that deepened over time. Ethan didn't rush her or demand more than she could give. Instead, he patiently chipped away at the icy walls Bella had built around herself. Between Lauren's friendship and Ethan's quiet persistence, Bella began to feel something she hadn't experienced in years: safety. Ethan, sensitive to Bella's lingering pain, gently suggested she consider therapy. He recommended Dr. Amelia Ross, a therapist known for her work with trauma and emotional healing. At first, Bella resisted. The idea of opening up to a stranger felt terrifying, but with Ethan's encouragement, she decided to try. The first sessions were difficult, filled with silence and hesitation. Yet, little by little, Bella began to confront the wounds she had buried for so long. Through Dr. Ross's guidance and the unwavering support of Ethan and Lauren, Bella experienced something profoundly new: unconditional acceptance. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen, truly loved, and it began to change everything. Ethan chose the cozy little bar where he and Bella had shared countless quiet evenings for his proposal. The place was softly lit, filled with the warm glow of amber lights and the hum of familiar laughter. As they sat in their favorite corner booth, Ethan reached across the table, his hand covering Bella's. With a deep breath and a tender smile, he spoke about the future they'd been building together. The late-night talks, the dreams they'd dared to share, the life he wanted to create with her. Then, to Bella's astonishment, Ethan knelt on one knee and held out a simple, elegant ring. "Bella Vermont," he said, voice steady but full of emotion. "Will you marry me?" Tears blurred Bella's vision as joy flooded through her. She had spent her whole life longing for a place where she truly belonged, and now, here was Ethan, offering her a home built on love, trust, and safety. She whispered a tearful yes as he slipped the ring onto her finger, the entire bar erupting into applause. Later that evening, still buzzing with happiness, Bella couldn't wait to share the news with her family. She called Camille first, eager to tell her little sister, but Camille's response was odd. "Oh," Camille said flatly after Bella announced her engagement. "That's nice." Her tone was cool, almost indifferent, as if Bella had just mentioned buying a new pair of shoes rather than sharing life-changing news. Confused, Bella called her parents next. Gregory and Lillian answered together, and for a brief moment, Bella expected excitement, maybe even happy tears. Instead, they offered polite congratulations, their voices distant, lacking the warmth Bella had hoped for. "Well, that's good news," Gregory said evenly. "We'll figure out the details later." The conversation ended quickly, leaving Bella staring at her phone, heart sinking. She told herself they were probably just caught off guard or preoccupied with work. Still, the nagging unease wouldn't leave her. Lying in bed that night, Bella turned the ring on her finger and tried to push away the doubt creeping in. This was supposed to be the happiest time of her life. She didn't want to believe that her family's lukewarm reaction meant anything more. But deep down, a tiny whisper of fear began to take root, one she couldn't quite ignore. In the weeks following the proposal, Bella threw herself into planning the wedding with the same dedication she gave to her work. She and Ethan spent evenings at their kitchen table, sketching guest lists and debating flower arrangements. It wasn't going to be a huge event, just 80 guests, intimate and meaningful. For Bella, what mattered most wasn't the decor or the menu. It was seeing her family there, finally sharing in her happiness. At first, she assumed their lack of enthusiasm was temporary. People just needed time to adjust, she told herself. Gregory and Lillian had always been busy, and Camille was unpredictable. Bella clung to the belief that as the date drew closer, everyone would come together. But as the weeks went by, an unsettling pattern emerged. The invitations had gone out, yet no RSVP cards came back from Bella's side of the family. None. At first, she laughed it off. Maybe they'd forgotten to mail them. Maybe they'd just call instead. So Bella started calling. Camille always answered with the same detached tone. "We'll talk about it later," she said again and again. Gregory and Lillian were no better. When they picked up, their voices sounded distracted, like Bella had interrupted something far more important. They promised to sit down and discuss the wedding soon, but soon never came. Meanwhile, Ethan's family was buzzing with excitement. His parents were helping with decorations, his sister was planning the bridal shower, and their steady stream of texts and updates only highlighted the silence on Bella's side. At night, Bella lay awake, scrolling through seating charts on her phone, her chest tightening with each unanswered message. She imagined Camille trying on bridesmaid dresses, her mother giving advice about flower arrangements, her father practicing a toast. None of it was real. One evening, Ethan found her staring blankly at a list of names. "Maybe they're just busy," he said gently, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "They'll come around." Bella nodded, but the reassurance rang hollow. In the pit of her stomach, a cold dread was forming. She told herself it was nothing, that families got stressed before weddings, that this was normal. But deep down, Bella knew something wasn't right. The silence wasn't just forgetfulness. It felt deliberate, heavy, like the pause before a storm, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was coming straight for her. 2 weeks before her wedding, Bella was sipping her morning coffee when her phone buzzed with a flurry of notifications. At first, she assumed they were well wishes from friends about her upcoming ceremony. But when she opened her social media feed, her stomach dropped. There, front and center, was a photo of Camille. She stood beside a handsome man, Ryan Walker, a successful attorney Bella had met briefly at a family gathering months ago. Camille's left hand was raised, displaying a glittering diamond ring. Both of them were beaming with joy, their faces lit up with excitement. The caption read simply, "I said yes. Can't wait to spend forever with you, Ryan." Bella blinked at the screen, her breath catching. In a matter of minutes, the post exploded with likes and comments. Relatives she hadn't spoken to in years were chiming in, gushing over Camille's engagement. Friends of the family tagged each other, planning celebrations and sending congratulations. Bella felt a strange mixture of confusion and hurt. She had told Camille about her own wedding plans months ago, and yet Camille had never once mentioned Ryan, let alone an engagement. The timing felt impossible to ignore. Heart pounding, Bella called her sister. After 2 rings, Camille picked up. "Camille, I just saw your post," Bella said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Congratulations, I'm really happy for you. I just wish you'd told me before you announced it to everyone." There was a pause. When Camille spoke, her tone was cool and clipped. "Thanks, Bella. Things happened quickly. I didn't have time to tell everyone personally." Bella frowned, gripping the phone tighter. "I get that, but my wedding is in 2 weeks. I don't know. I thought you'd at least mention it to me first." Camille sighed audibly. "Look, I'm really busy right now. We'll talk later, okay?" Before Bella could respond, the line went dead. Bella sat frozen, staring at her phone. The warmth and excitement she'd felt when she congratulated Camille had been met with an icy wall. She tried to shake it off, telling herself she was overthinking things. Families were complicated, and maybe Camille had just been overwhelmed. Still, as Bella set her phone down, a sinking feeling took root in her chest, a whisper of dread that this was no mere coincidence. Something was wrong. She just didn't know what it was yet. A week before the wedding, Bella's phone lit up with a call from her parents. She answered with a hopeful smile, thinking maybe, finally, they were ready to talk about plans and travel arrangements. Instead, her father's voice was clipped and serious. "Bella," Gregory began, "we need to discuss something important." Before Bella could respond, her mother's softer tone cut in. "It's about Camille's engagement party." Bella's pulse quickened. "Engagement party? I didn't even know you'd set a date yet." There was a pause, heavy and uncomfortable. Then Gregory spoke again, his words landing like stones. "Camille and Ryan have decided to host their engagement party on the same day as your wedding." Bella froze. "What?" The word came out as a whisper. It wasn't intentional, Lillian added quickly. They just felt it was the best timing for everyone. Bella's hands trembled. The best timing? Mom, my wedding has been planned for months. The invitations went out weeks ago. Her father's sigh was deep and weary. Bella, the family can't be in two places at once. You need to understand that. For a moment, Bella thought she'd misheard him. Are you saying I should move my wedding date? Yes, Gregory said simply. It's the only solution that makes sense. Everyone will be at Camille's event. You'll need to reschedule so the family can attend yours later. Shock and anger collided inside Bella like a storm. She stood abruptly, pacing the room. No, absolutely not. This is my wedding day, and it's not some casual dinner I can just shift around. Bella, please, Lillian pleaded, her voice breaking slightly. Camille has been under so much stress. She needs our support right now. You're strong. You'll understand. Bella's breath came fast and shallow. For years, she'd swallowed her pain, stayed silent as Camille was always placed first. But this was beyond anything she could have imagined. So that's it? Bella's voice shook. If I don't move my wedding, you'll all just go to Camille's instead? Silence filled the line. That silence was the answer. A cold clarity swept through Bella. Then don't come, she said finally, her tone flat and resolute. I'm not changing my wedding for anyone. And with that, she ended the call. It was the first time in her life she'd truly chosen herself, even if it meant walking down the aisle completely alone. The morning of Bella's wedding dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect weather she had prayed for during the months of planning. She stood in front of the mirror in her bridal suite, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her veil. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to feel hopeful. Today would be beautiful, even if her family wasn't there. She still had Ethan, and she still had Lauren, her best friend, her maid of honor, the one person who had been by her side through every stressful decision and sleepless night. As Bella picked up her phone to check last-minute details, it buzzed with an incoming call. Lauren's name flashed across the screen, and Bella answered with a relieved smile. Lauren, are you on your way? I can't wait to see you. There was a pause on the other end, longer than it should have been. When Lauren finally spoke, her voice was strained. Bella, I'm so sorry, but I can't come today. For a moment, Bella thought she'd misheard. What? Lauren, it's my wedding day. I know, Lauren said quickly, her tone rushed and uneasy. Something came up, personal stuff. I can't explain right now. Please understand. Bella's stomach dropped. She gripped the edge of the vanity, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the wood. You've been planning this with me for months. You're my maid of honor. I don't understand. Can't you just... I'm sorry, Lauren interrupted, her voice cracking slightly. I wish I could be there. I really do. I'll call you later and explain everything. Goodbye, Bella. The line went dead. Bella sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. A sharp, hollow ache spread through her chest. Lauren wasn't just a friend, she was Bella's chosen family, the one person she thought she could count on no matter what. And now, on the most important day of her life, she was gone. A soft knock on the door startled Bella. Mia Bennett, a kind but more distant colleague, poked her head inside. Bella, I heard what happened, Mia said gently. If you need someone to step in as maid of honor, I'd be honored. Bella forced a shaky smile and nodded, grateful yet devastated. As Mia helped her with the final touches, Bella's thoughts churned. First her family, now Lauren. The walls around her seemed to close in, and a dark, gnawing certainty began to take hold. Something about today wasn't just wrong, it was deliberate. As the ceremony hour drew near, Bella stood hidden behind the chapel doors, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the soft music playing inside. Through a small crack, she could see the guests gathering. On Ethan's side, there was laughter, chatter, and a warm hum of excitement. His family had shown up in full force, uncles, aunts, cousins, friends, all eager to celebrate this union. On Bella's side, there was nothing but a chilling emptiness. Row after row of chairs sat unclaimed, their white covers pristine and untouched. It was as though someone had drawn a line down the room, dividing joy from desolation. Bella swallowed hard, her throat painfully dry. A part of her still clung to the foolish hope that her family might appear at the last moment. Maybe this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Maybe Lauren would rush through the doors with an apology, bouquet in hand, but the doors never opened. When the time came, Thomas Carter, Ethan's father, walked toward her with a gentle smile. Bella's breath hitched. This was supposed to be Gregory's role, to walk her down the aisle, to give her away with love and pride. Instead, Thomas offered his arm, filling the space her father had left behind. "You look beautiful," he whispered kindly. Bella managed a shaky nod, forcing a smile. "Thank you for being here." The music swelled. Together, they began the slow walk down the aisle. Bella kept her gaze forward, afraid that if she looked to the left, the sight of those empty seats would shatter her completely. Still, her eyes betrayed her, darting once toward the void where her family should have been. The contrast was brutal. On one side, tears of joy and cheers. On the other, cold, perfect silence. Each step felt heavier than the last. By the time she reached Ethan, Bella's face ached from holding back tears. Ethan's warm hands steadied her, but even his presence couldn't erase the cavernous absence behind her. As they recited their vows, Bella's voice trembled. She forced the words out, smiling through the pain, determined not to let the guests see her breaking. When Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, the crowd erupted in applause. At least, half of it did. On the other side of the aisle, the silence remained absolute. The ceremony ended with cheers, hugs, and laughter from Ethan's family, while Bella's side stood untouched, like a ghostly reminder of everything she had lost. When the final notes of the music faded, Bella clutched Ethan's hand tightly. She smiled for the photographs, posed for the crowd, and pretended for just a moment that she wasn't hollow inside. But deep down, she knew the truth. This day would forever be remembered not for the vows she made, but for the people who weren't there to hear them. The echoes of applause from Ethan's family still lingered in Bella's mind long after the last guest had left. She sat on the edge of the hotel bed, her wedding dress pulled around her like a heavy cloud. The evening should have been filled with laughter and joy, but instead, Bella felt hollow, as though the celebration had happened around her rather than with her. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Bella flinched when she saw the name on the screen. Mom. For a moment, she considered letting it ring, afraid of what she might hear. But curiosity and desperation won out, and she swiped to answer. Mom? Bella's voice cracked. Bella, Lillian said, her tone thick with emotion. Why didn't you want us there today? The words struck Bella like a physical blow. She shot upright, her heart pounding. What are you talking about? I begged you to come. I sent invitations, texts, voicemails. I called you so many times. There was a pause on the other end, then Lillian's voice, quiet and confused. Bella, we never got anything from you. Not a single message, not one invitation. It was like, you didn't want us there. No. Bella shook her head furiously, even though her mother couldn't see her. I sent everything, Mom. The invitations went out months ago. I called over and over, and Camille kept saying you were busy or that you'd get back to me. Her mother's breathing quickened. Camille never told us that. We just assumed. Bella, we thought you didn't want us to come. The room seemed to tilt around Bella. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady herself. That doesn't make any sense, she whispered. Why would I plan a wedding without my own family there? I don't know, Lillian said, her voice breaking. We were hurt, Bella. We thought maybe you were angry with us. Tears blurred Bella's vision as disbelief and rage battled inside her. Nothing about this added up. Someone was lying, and Bella could no longer pretend everything was just a misunderstanding. Mom, she said slowly, her tone sharp with determination. I need you to tell me everything. Exactly what you received, what Camille said, every single detail. As her mother began recounting the past few weeks, Bella's stomach turned. Each word painted a picture she didn't want to see, but couldn't ignore. Somewhere in the gaps and silences, a dark truth was waiting to be uncovered, and Bella knew she wouldn't stop until she found it. Bella sat frozen after the call with her mother, her mind spinning like a storm she couldn't control. The conversation had shattered what little sense she'd managed to make of the past few weeks. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't her parents being distracted or careless. Someone had interfered, and deep down, Bella knew exactly who it was. The next morning, fueled by a mix of anger and dread, Bella began digging. She retraced every step she'd taken in the months leading up to the wedding. The invitations she had mailed, the texts she had sent, the calls that had gone unanswered. It all seemed so deliberate now, as though an invisible hand had been erasing her efforts before they could reach anyone. Bella logged into her wedding planning email account, scrolling through the digital records of RSVPs. To her shock, she saw messages marked as read that she hadn't opened herself. When she checked the timestamps, they lined up perfectly with the weeks Camille had visited under the guise of helping Bella organize. Her heart sank. Camille had access to everything. Bella's fingers shook as she replayed every conversation she'd had with her sister. Camille had been unusually quiet whenever wedding plans came up, always quick to change the subject or brush off Bella's concerns. At the time, Bella had assumed her sister was just preoccupied. Now, she saw it for what it truly was, a carefully constructed lie. Driven by a sickening need for proof, Bella called Lauren. After several rings, Lauren finally answered, her voice wary. "Bella." "Lauren," Bella said, breathless. "Why didn't you come to my wedding? What happened?" Lauren hesitated, then admitted. "Camille told me you didn't want me there anymore. She said you'd changed your mind about the bridal party and didn't know how to tell me." Bella's knees nearly buckled. "That's a lie. I never said that. You've been my closest friend, Lauren. I needed you there." The truth began to unfurl like a nightmare. Camille hadn't just tampered with the invitations. She had poisoned every connection Bella had, one thread at a time, until Bella stood utterly alone on her wedding day. And then came the final blow. Later that afternoon, Bella received a message from Ryan Walker, Camille's fiancé. His words were cold and clipped. "The engagement is off. I can't marry someone who manipulates everyone around her." Bella read the message 3 times, her pulse hammering in her ears. Even Ryan had seen through Camille's facade. The pieces snapped into place. Camille hadn't wanted to celebrate Bella's happiness. She had wanted to destroy it. By isolating Bella, by controlling what their parents and friends believed, Camille had ensured that Bella would walk down the aisle surrounded by silence. Bella's body shook, not just with grief, but with a new burning resolve. She would no longer be Camille's victim. The truth was finally out in the open, and Bella knew exactly what she had to do next. The truth had been exposed, and with it came a tidal wave of emotions Bella could no longer contain. After days of restless nights, she decided it was time to face her parents, not over the phone, not through messages, but in person. This wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about years of silence, favoritism, and wounds that had never healed. They agreed to meet at a neutral place, a quiet hotel lounge halfway between Bella's apartment and her parents' home. The room smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood. Bella arrived first, her heart pounding with every step as she clutched a folded napkin in her hands, just to keep them from shaking. When Gregory and Lillian walked in, Bella's breath caught. They looked older than she remembered, the strain of recent weeks etched into the lines on their faces. They sat down across from her, hesitant, as though afraid of what this meeting might bring. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Bella broke the silence. "I need you to listen," she said, her voice trembling. "Really listen, because I've spent my entire life feeling like I didn't matter, and I can't keep pretending anymore." The words spilled out of her like water bursting through a dam. She spoke of childhood dinners where Camille was the center of every conversation, while Bella's achievements were dismissed with a nod. She described the science fair, how she'd won first place and stood alone on stage while her parents sat in a theater across town, watching Camille dance. And finally, she told them about the wedding, about walking down the aisle without a single familiar face, about hearing the cheers from Ethan's family while hers remained deafeningly silent. By the time Bella reached the end, her voice cracked. "I thought I could handle it," she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. "But standing there, looking at those empty chairs, it felt like proof that I'll never be enough for you." Gregory's eyes glistened, his hands clenched on the table. Lillian covered her mouth, shaking her head as tears spilled over. They said nothing, only listened, truly listened, for the first time in Bella's life. When Bella finally fell silent, chest heaving from the release of years of pain, the room was filled with raw, aching quiet. Her parents reached across the table, their own tears mingling with hers. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. The air in the hotel lounge was thick with silence after Bella's tearful confession. Gregory wiped at his eyes, his usually stern expression cracked open by grief and shame. For a long moment, he couldn't bring himself to speak. Finally, he cleared his throat, his voice hoarse. "Bella," he said, leaning forward. "I have failed you." Bella's breath caught, but she stayed quiet, letting him continue. "I thought I was being fair. With my students, with everyone else in this town, I held myself to that standard. But at home, I didn't see what I was doing to you. I was blind, and I let Camille take all the light while you were left in the shadows." His hands trembled as they gripped the edge of the table. "That's on me, and I'm so sorry." Lillian, seated beside him, reached for Bella's hands. Her own were cold and damp. "I didn't mean to hurt you, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice breaking. Camille always seemed so fragile. I thought she needed me more, and I let that blind me to the fact that you needed me too. I didn't realize I was pushing you away every time I chose her first." Tears streamed down Bella's cheeks as she listened. This was what she'd been waiting to hear for years. Not excuses, not defensiveness, but an acknowledgement of her pain. "We can't undo the past," Gregory said softly, "but we can try to make amends. If you'll let us, we want to go to family therapy with you. Learn how to love both our daughters equally. Learn how to truly be a family again." Bella's chest ached with a mix of hope and sorrow. She nodded slowly, knowing this was only the first step. Just then, the door opened. Camille stood there, her face unreadable. For a brief second, Bella thought she might join them, that they might finally face this together. But without a word, Camille turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the tile until the sound faded into silence. Lillian sobbed quietly, while Gregory stared at the doorway, his jaw tight. Bella sat still, watching the empty space where her sister had been. She turned back to her parents, squeezing their hands. "This isn't over," she said softly. "But I believe we can try." As they embraced, Bella glanced toward the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered, blurred through her tears. For the first time in years, there was a glimmer of hope, a fragile promise that healing might finally begin, even if the path ahead was uncertain. 6 months had passed since that emotional meeting at the hotel. Time hadn't erased the pain, but it had given Bella and her parents a chance to reflect. True to their promise, Gregory and Lillian agreed to begin family therapy with Dr. Nathaniel Hayes, a renowned specialist known for helping fractured families rebuild trust. The first session was awkward, the air heavy with unspoken words. Bella sat on one side of the circle, her parents on the other, while Dr. Hayes observed them calmly. His office was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and shelves lined with books about healing and growth. But even the soothing environment couldn't mask the tension in the room. At first, Gregory did what he always did. He spoke over everyone. When Bella tried to describe how it felt to be ignored and overshadowed, Gregory interrupted, trying to explain his intentions. Dr. Hayes gently raised a hand. "Gregory, this isn't about defending yourself," he said evenly. "This is about listening, truly listening." Gregory fell silent, his jaw tight, but for the first time, he stayed quiet long enough to hear Bella's pain. Lillian, her hands twisting in her lap, admitted to her pattern of favoritism toward Camille. "I thought Camille needed me more," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "I didn't see that by protecting her. I was hurting you." Bella's voice trembled as she finally let herself speak freely. "I spent my whole life believing I wasn't worth loving," she said. "Every time you chose Camille, it felt like you were telling me I didn't matter." The words hung in the air, raw and powerful. Gregory's shoulders slumped as if the weight of years had just landed on him. Lillian reached out, but Bella didn't take her hand, at least, not yet. As the weeks went on, progress came in small, fragile steps. Gregory practiced patience and learned to listen without judgment. Lillian worked on balancing her affection, making conscious efforts to show Bella she was valued. Bella, in turn, began to open up, learning that expressing her emotions didn't make her weak. By the end of one particularly difficult session, Dr. Hayes smiled gently. "This isn't the end," he said, "but it's a beginning." Bella left that day exhausted yet lighter, carrying with her the first glimmer of hope that her family might one day truly heal. The steady rhythm of therapy sessions had begun to mend some of the wounds within Bella's family, but there was still one person missing from the circle: Camille. Bella hadn't seen or heard from her sister since the day Camille walked out of the hotel without saying a word. One gray afternoon, rain drizzled against Bella's living room windows as she sorted through old photos for the upcoming anniversary party. A sudden knock at the door made her pause. When she opened it, she froze. Camille stood there, drenched and trembling, her once perfect hair plastered to her face. Gone was the confident, polished sister Bella remembered. This Camille looked fragile, almost unrecognizable. "Can I come in?" Camille's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Bella stepped aside silently, her heart pounding. They sat across from each other, the silence between them thick with everything unsaid. Finally, Camille broke it, her hands twisting in her lap. "I was so angry at you," Camille began, tears pooling in her eyes. "Angry because you left. Angry because you had the courage to build a life outside Vermont while I stayed behind, trapped in a role I didn't even choose." Bella swallowed hard, listening. "I was jealous," Camille admitted, the words tumbling out in a rush. "You had freedom, a career, someone who truly loved you, and I—" Her voice cracked. "I only had Mom and Dad's expectations and their constant reminders that I was the golden child. It felt like pressure, not love." She buried her face in her hands. "When you left, I felt abandoned, like you'd taken away the only person who ever understood me. And instead of talking to you about it, I let my jealousy twist into something ugly. I did things I can't take back. I hurt you because I wanted you to feel as small as I did." Bella's throat tightened. "You didn't just hurt me, Camille. You almost destroyed me." "I know," Camille whispered, her shoulders shaking. "And I'm so sorry." Bella's tears fell freely as she crossed the room and pulled her sister into a trembling embrace. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But in that moment, they found a fragile thread of connection, a first step toward rebuilding what had been shattered. For the first time in a long time, Bella dared to believe they might one day find their way back to each other. Even as Bella's family began to heal, there was another relationship weighing heavily on her heart: her friendship with Lauren. Lauren had been her first real friend in Boston, the person who had stood by her through the toughest days of building a new life. But Camille's lies had poisoned that bond, leaving behind wounds Bella wasn't sure could ever be mended. Determined to try, Bella reached out and invited Lauren to meet at their favorite cafe, a quiet corner table where they had once spent hours laughing and sharing dreams. When Lauren arrived, her posture was stiff, her eyes guarded. She sat down without a smile, clutching her coffee like a shield. "Lauren?" Bella began softly. "Thank you for coming. I know it's complicated." Lauren's lips pressed into a thin line. "Complicated is one way to put it." Bella took a deep breath and told her everything: how Camille had intercepted invitations, forged messages, and convinced everyone, including Lauren, that Bella didn't want them at the wedding. As Bella spoke, Lauren's expression shifted from confusion to pain, then to anger. When Bella finished, there was a long silence. "I believe you," Lauren said finally, her voice low. "I can see now how she manipulated everything. But Bella—" She paused, her eyes glistening. "I can't just forget what it felt like to be excluded. To think my best friend didn't want me there on her wedding day. It broke something inside me." Bella's throat tightened. "I never meant to hurt you. You were the person I wanted beside me more than anyone." "I know," Lauren whispered, blinking back tears. "But some things, they don't go back to the way they were." Bella reached across the table, her hand hovering over Lauren's. "Maybe we can start over, even if it's different, Lauren shook her head gently and stood. I need time, maybe someday. But for now, I think we should go our separate ways. Bella watched her friend walk out of the cafe, her chest aching. Not every wound could be healed, she realized. As she left alone, Bella carried both sorrow and gratitude. She had lost a friend, but she had faced the truth, and that, at least, was a kind of peace. It was a reminder that even in healing, some scars remain. A full year had passed since Bella's lonely wedding day, and now, as the crisp autumn air filled the city, she stood in the center of her living room, surrounded by flowers, decorations, and a carefully written guest list. This time, things were different. She wasn't just planning a party. She was planning a symbol of healing, a night where everyone who had once been fractured would come together. Ethan entered the room carrying a box of candles, his warm smile easing Bella's nerves. Everything looks beautiful, he said, setting the box down beside her. Bella exhaled slowly, glancing around at the garlands of soft white roses and glowing lanterns she had chosen herself. It has to be perfect, she murmured. I want everyone to feel safe here, like this is home again. As they worked side by side, Bella's mind wandered back to the past year. She remembered the gut-wrenching silence of her wedding, the empty seats where her family should have been. She remembered the painful therapy sessions, filled with tears and raw confessions. But she also remembered the moments of breakthrough, the first time her father truly listened, the first time her mother hugged her without guilt, the fragile smile on Camille's face when she returned. Tonight would bring all of that full circle. When she checked the list one last time, Bella's hand lingered over two names, Camille and Lauren. She had invited them both, unsure if they would come. Even now, Bella wasn't certain if old wounds could fully close, but she had to try. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Bella slipped into a soft cream dress, her fingers brushing over the locket Ethan had given her on their wedding night. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and whispered to herself, "This time will be different." Ethan joined her, taking her hand in his. "No matter what happens," he said, "we'll face it together." Bella smiled, her heart steady with hope. Whatever came next, she was ready to meet it head-on. Tonight was not just a celebration, it was the promise of a new beginning. The venue filled slowly, the warm glow of string lights casting a soft, welcoming radiance across the room. Bella stood near the entrance, heart pounding as the first guests arrived. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the proof that tonight would not be a repeat of her wedding day. Gregory and Lillian were the first to appear. Bella's breath caught when she saw her parents walking toward her, hand in hand. Gregory carried a small, carefully wrapped box, while Lillian held a bouquet of fresh lilies, Bella's favorite flower. The moment they reached her, Lillian enveloped Bella in a fierce, tearful hug. "You look radiant," Lillian whispered. "We wouldn't miss this for the world." Bella's chest tightened with emotion as Gregory added softly, "We're so proud of you, Bella. Truly." Before she could respond, the sound of hesitant footsteps caught her attention. Camille appeared in the doorway, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Bella's breath hitched. For a moment, the old tension flickered between them. Then Camille offered a small, tentative smile. "Hi," she said, almost shyly. Bella crossed the distance and hugged her sister. It wasn't the fierce embrace of forgiveness, but it was a beginning. As more guests arrived, laughter and conversation began to fill the space. Bella moved through the crowd, overwhelmed by the warmth that surrounded her. Then, the final name on her list appeared. Lauren. Lauren paused at the threshold, clearly uncertain. Bella's heart leapt. She approached slowly, giving Lauren the space to decide. "I didn't know if you'd come," Bella said softly. Lauren's eyes softened. "I almost didn't, but you deserve to be celebrated." The two women embraced briefly, a silent agreement to let the past rest for one night. The room buzzed with joy, a stark contrast to the haunting emptiness of Bella's wedding day. Everywhere she looked, people were smiling, connecting, weaving together the pieces of a family and community that had once been broken. As Bella stood in the center of it all, her heart swelled. For the first time in her life, she felt surrounded, not just by people, but by love. And this time, no chair was left empty. The celebration was in full swing. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed off the walls, and the room pulsed with warmth and energy. Bella stood close to Ethan, watching as her parents chatted with Camille and Lauren spoke with a cousin she hadn't seen in years. The scene felt almost surreal, like a dream she didn't dare to believe was real. Ethan squeezed Bella's hand, his eyes shining with a secret only the two of them knew. Bella's heart fluttered. This was the moment they had been waiting for all night. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the center of the room, gently clinking her glass to gather everyone's attention. The conversations quieted, curious faces turning toward her. Ethan moved beside her, his smile wide and proud. "Thank you all for being here," Bella began, her voice trembling with emotion. "Tonight means more to me than I can ever express. A year ago, this room would have been filled with silence and empty chairs, but tonight," she glanced around at the glowing faces of her family and friends. "Tonight, it's full of love." Ethan placed an arm around her shoulders as Bella placed a hand over her stomach, her smile tender and full of hope. "There's another reason we wanted you all here," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "Ethan and I are excited to share that we're going to have a baby." For a heartbeat, the room was completely still. Then it erupted in cheers and joyful cries. Lillian burst into tears, rushing forward to hug Bella tightly. "Oh, my sweet girl, you're going to be a wonderful mother," she sobbed. Gregory wrapped Ethan in a bear hug, his voice thick with pride. "You'll be an incredible father." Camille reached for Bella's hand, her eyes shining. "I'm so happy for you, Bella. Truly." In that single magical moment, Bella felt the last lingering cracks in her family's foundation begin to seal. Their healing was complete, ready to welcome a new life into their circle of love. The party slowly wound down as the evening slipped into night. Guests departed one by one, leaving behind the soft glow of candles and the lingering scent of flowers. Bella stood by the large window, gazing out at the city lights shimmering against the dark sky. For a moment, she simply breathed, taking in the quiet after so much laughter and celebration. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. She leaned back into him, letting his warmth anchor her. Together, they looked out at the glowing skyline, a view that felt like a promise of everything yet to come. "It's hard to believe this is the same life," Bella murmured. "A year ago, I felt so alone, and tonight I felt surrounded by love." Ethan kissed her temples softly. "You earned this, Bella. You fought for it. You didn't give up, even when it would have been easier to walk away." Bella's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of gratitude. She thought back to that painful day when she'd walked down the aisle with empty seats behind her, her heart breaking even as she smiled for the cameras. She remembered the countless therapy sessions, the vulnerable conversations, and the nights she'd lain awake wondering if her family would ever truly see her. And now, here they were. Her parents had apologized and grown. Camille had returned, fragile but willing. Even Lauren had come tonight, if only for a brief truce. Bella placed a hand on her belly, feeling the delicate spark of new life growing there. This child would never know the loneliness she had endured. She vowed silently that the cycle of favoritism would end here, with her. Ethan tightened his hold on her, sensing her thoughts. "This is our chance," Bella whispered. "Our new beginning." Ethan smiled and kissed her cheek. "Then, let's make it count." Together, they turned away from the window and toward their future. The house was quiet now, but Bella's heart was full. For the first time, she felt certain that no matter what challenges lay ahead, love would be their foundation, and that was enough.